Level 1, you're 23. You're sitting in a briefing room at a forward operating base in eastern Afghanistan. That the room smells like plywood and diesel. 6 other men around you. You know 2 from your unit. The other 4 you've seen around the base but never worked with directly. A lieutenant colonel walks in and closes the door. He doesn't sit. He stands at the front with a folder and looks at each of you before he speaks. He says, "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Not in writing, not on a radio, not in a letter home. Deep penetration reconnaissance. A valley system in Kunar province that coalition forces have tried to operate in 3 times in the past 2 years. All 3 times the result was the same. The terrain is against you. The population is against you. The exit routes are limited and being watched." He doesn't say no return directly. He doesn't have to. The map on the wall says it for him. You are 23 years old, 2 years out of Ranger School, and the man at the front of the room is telling you something with his eyes that his words are carefully not saying. You don't raise your hand. You don't ask the question everyone is thinking. You look at the map and start doing the math. Level 2, preparation takes 4 days. 4 days is not long. The mission window doesn't allow more. Intelligence on the target has a shelf life, and the shelf is already expiring. You clean your weapon 3 times, not because it needs it after the second, because your hands need something to do while your head works through things your hands can't help with. You study the terrain imagery until the valley is a shape you can see with your eyes closed. Every ridge, every draw, every cluster of buildings that could be a problem or nothing. The briefing is detailed on the objective and thin on exfil. Notice the ratio. How much they tell you about getting in versus how much they tell you about getting out. A staff sergeant named Pryor catches you after the second briefing in the hallway. He's worked with twice before. He doesn't waste words. He says, "You see the exfil routes?" You say, "Yeah." He says, "There's basically one." You say, "Yeah." He nods, goes back to his room. That's the whole conversation. That conversation is also the whole truth of where you are. You write a letter on the 3rd night. Not a final letter. You tell yourself that specifically. You seal it and give it to your platoon sergeant with standard instructions. You tell yourself it's the same as before. It isn't. You know it isn't. But you put it in his hands and go back to the map. The 4th day you don't study anything. You eat. You sleep more than you expect to. Your body doing something intelligent that your mind isn't running. Level 3, you insert at 0200. The helicopter drops you 4 kilometers from the objective. No lights. The aircraft moves low and fast through the mountain passes, rotor sound bouncing off rock walls, and then the ramp opens and the wind takes over and then you're on the ground and the helicopter is already gone and there is nothing. 7 men in a valley that wants to kill you. You move in file. Pryor on point. You're 3rd in the stack. The terrain is steep and loose underfoot, and the altitude is high enough that your lungs register a complaint for the first hour. You move for 3 hours without stopping, staying on the ridgeline where sight lines are better and approach is harder. Every 50 meters you stop. Listen. Scan. You reach the observation post at 0500. A natural depression in the rock with good cover and a clean sightline down to the valley floor and the 3 compounds you're here to watch. You settle in. The first day is watching. You glass the compounds every 15 minutes. Log movement. A man exits the northern compound at 0630 and doesn't return. 2 trucks park at the central compound at 0900 and men unload items you can't fully identify at this range. A woman hangs laundry on the south side at midday. You write everything in a small notebook in shorthand only your team uses. You eat 1 meal. You drink water carefully because resupply is not coming. Pryor taps your arm at 1400 and points without speaking. Below in the central compound, a configuration of personnel and vehicles that matches the target package exactly. You key the radio once. The prearranged signal. Acknowledgement comes back 30 seconds later. 2 clicks. They know level 4, night 2 is when it goes wrong. You hear the first voice at 2200. Below and to the east. Maybe 300 meters. But in mountain terrain, voices carry in ways that flatten distance, and you have no way to confirm 300 is 300. You pull the team tighter. No radio traffic. You listen, the voices move south, then stop, then nothing for 40 minutes. Then a dog somewhere below begins barking in the pattern that means it found something worth barking at. Not random, directional, pointed toward your ridgeline. Pryor leans close. 1 word, compromise. Don't know if he's right. Maybe it's shepherds. Maybe the dog found a rabbit. But in this valley with 1 exfil route, you make the decision that compromised is the operating assumption until proven otherwise. You begin moving. The plan had you holding 2 more days. You move toward extraction 40 hours early in the dark, with voices somewhere behind you that may or may not be searching. You key the radio on the emergency frequency. Position, situation, fewest words possible. Then you wait 11 minutes. 7 men holding still on a ridgeline. The voice on the other end says, earliest extraction is plus 6 hours. Can you hold? You look at the valley. You look at the direction the dog was barking. You say, we'll hold. Level 5, you move to an alternate position. Higher, harder to approach, worse for your legs, but better for your survival. The cold at this elevation before dawn is a different kind of cold. Patient. It gets into your gear and stays, 2 men on watch at all times, the others still, conserving heat and energy. You eat nothing because there's nothing left. Drink the last of your water at 0300, and after that you don't drink. The waiting is its own kind of work. Your mind wants to move when your body can't. It goes to the letter you gave the platoon sergeant, your mother's kitchen. A road back home you haven't thought about in 2 years that appears now with complete clarity. You pull your thinking back every time, to the rocks under your boots, the sound of the wind, the compass bearing to the LZ. At 0430, the dog starts again, closer. You and Pryor look at each other, and a decision is made without words. You begin moving to the landing zone 90 minutes early. The final 300 meters to the LZ is open ground. No cover, no way around it. You cross it anyway. 7 men moving fast in the dark, knowing exactly what open ground means and moving across it because stopping is worse. You reach the tree line, no contact. Nothing behind you. Pryor exhales slowly. You don't say anything. Neither does he. Level 6, you hear it before you see it. Rotors through the passes, low and fast. It drops into the LZ without hovering, ramp already down as it touches ground. You move 7 men across the last 100 meters. You're last on. You step onto the ramp and the crew chief pulls your kit, and the ramp starts rising before you're fully seated. The helicopter lifts. The valley drops away below. The ridgeline, the compounds. The terrain that spent 6 hours trying to solve the problem of you. It all shrinks, and then the aircraft is through the passes and the valley is gone. You look at the 6 men around you. 2 have their eyes closed. 1 stares at the ceiling. Pryor looks out the small window at the mountains. Nobody talks. The rotors are too loud and nobody has anything that needs saying right now. You feel something that takes a moment to identify. Not relief exactly. Something more complicated. The weight of having been inside a situation that prepared a specific ending for you and having walked out the other side of it. The base appears below. Same buildings. Same perimeter. Same flag. You land. Level 7. The debrief runs 3 hours. The lieutenant colonel. The intelligence officers. A man in civilian clothes who doesn't introduce himself and whose questions are the most specific in the room. You go through it chronologically. Insertion, movement, observation, compromise, decision, extraction. You give them everything in the notebook. The vehicle movements, the personnel counts, the configuration at 1400 on day 1 that matched the target package. The man in civilian clothes writes that last part down slowly. When there are no more questions, the lieutenant colonel thanks you. He says the intelligence collected was significant. He uses that word twice. You understand it's the version of what he actually means that he's able to say out loud. You walk into the afternoon. Pryor falls in beside you. He says, "You eat yet?" You say, "No." He says, "Chow hall's open." You eat 2 plates of food and drink 4 cups of water and don't talk much. That's all right. Right now the eating is the thing. Level 8. 3 days later you're on a transport to Bagram. Your platoon sergeant returns the letter without comment. You take it without comment. That night you look at it for a long time without opening it. Then you tear it up, methodically, into small pieces. Whatever you wrote belongs to the version of this that didn't happen. No reason to read it. You sleep 12 hours, dreamless in a way that feels like your body exercising editorial control over what your mind would do in the dark. In the morning you run 5 miles on the perimeter road in the early light. Your legs are still recovering from the ridge, and they tell you about it for the first 2 miles and then stop complaining and just run. The same mountain range on the horizon. Different angle. You will carry this mission for the rest of your life. Not as weight, as information. You ran across open ground at 0430 because the situation required it. You did not hesitate, you know that now. You couldn't have known it before. Level 9, you rotate home 4 months later, Fort Benning in July. You call your mother and she cries quietly on her end, and you listen without trying to stop it because she's earned it. You take leave. Drive to the Georgia coast. A friend from your first deployment has a house near the water. You sit on his dock for 3 days doing almost nothing. Fishing once, badly, drinking beer in the evenings, watching the water that is flat and brown and nothing like the mountains. He doesn't ask about the mission. He knows which questions to leave alone. You eat dinner together every night and talk about a truck he's thinking about buying and a woman he's been seeing. On the last night, you sit on the dock after he's gone inside and you let yourself think about it directly for the first time. The valley, the ridgeline, The dog barking in the dark. Pryor's face in the moment before he said compromise. The open ground. The ramp coming up before you were fully seated. You think about the letter and what you must have written, and you're glad you didn't read it. You think about the fact that you are here. On a dock in Georgia with flat brown water in front of you and your friends, light on inside, and the rest of your life still ahead. Level 10, 6 weeks later you're back in uniform. New orders. New unit, same work. You report in, and the process of learning who these people are begins the way it always begins. Through proximity, small observations. What a person does under pressure tells you more than anything they say about themselves. There's a specialist in the new unit, 20 years old, first deployment ahead of him. He pays attention in a way most people don't. Listens more than he speaks. Takes the work seriously without performing how seriously he takes it. You run a land navigation exercise with him one afternoon. He makes a good route decision, the same one you would have made. You tell him once, good call on the route. He nods and keeps moving, that's enough. You are 24 years old and you have been inside something that prepared a specific ending for you, and you are still here. You know what your hands do when the stakes are real. What your legs do across open ground when stopping is worse. What 6 hours of cold and silence does to the inside of a person, and how to hold it without letting it hold you. Nobody will write about the mission. The valley is still there. The ridgeline. The one exfil route. Somewhere a notebook of observations fed into a process that produced an outcome you were never fully briefed on. You did your job. In a room with a map that said one thing and a mission window that said another, you looked at the math and you went anyway. You held the position. You made the call. You ran the open ground. You came home. The new briefing room is filling up around you. Coffee in your hand. Notebook open. A map on the wall and decisions waiting somewhere ahead in the dark. You are ready. That was always the point.